Hi and welcome to Whisky Shared. In this episode I'm blind tasting to find out which is the best budget Irish whiskey. Right, so for this episode I'm blind tasting Paddy Irish Whiskey, Tullamore D.E.W and Jameson. These are three very well known Irish whiskies, Jameson probably the most famous. What I'll be doing in this episode is I'll be getting my wife to pour each of these into blue Glencairn glasses, and then she'll mix them up so I don't know which is which. And I'll nose them, I'll taste them, and I'll pick which is my favourite. Before I do that, why not give this a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. On to the whiskey. Right, so my wife has poured the whiskey into these blue Glencairns. She's labelled them on the bottom so I'll be able to reveal at the end which is which, but for you at home I'll put it at the bottom of the screen. Let's start with the first one. Right, so this is typical Irish. All of these are a blend of grain and pot stilled malted barley. There's that typical sweet vanilla caramel. It's really rounded, really rich, buttery. Quite a lot of alcohol vapour, but that is quite common with blended Irish whiskies. Yeah, maybe a touch of honey, but that's definitely got that Irish character. On to the next one. Right, so this one's not as buttery and creamy. There's probably a little bit less alcohol vapour, but there's still that vanilla sweetness. Yeah, it's definitely softer on the nose than the first one. So let's move on to the last one. Right, this one's quite different again. This one almost has, there's almost like an extra, it's difficult to say. With the alcohol vapour, it's not very strong, but there's a hint of something, almost like, I don't know, almost like something sour. It's so light, but not as creamy and buttery like the first one. So very similar to the second one, but with a hint more sort of sourness with the alcohol. At this stage, I'd have to guess that this was my favourite, yeah, on the nose. But these two are very similar, so I couldn't tell those apart. So let's try this one on the palate. Right, so this one, very soft and gentle on the palate to start with. You don't get an initial hit of flavour, not until you swallow it. There is that alcohol vapour as it evaporates, that's quite noticeable. There is a creaminess, there's a butteriness, there's that vanilla. It's almost like that sort of creamy Werther's Originals, that sort of butter candy. It's really nice on the palate, but there is, being a budget whiskey, there is that alcohol vapour. I'm going to have another sip of it. Yeah, it's very pleasant, that one. There is a hint of sort of dry oak with that one on the finish. So it's quite a short finish, but nice and pleasant. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, with this one, there's a similar amount of alcohol vapor on the palate. There is a little bit of flavour that comes through, and on the finish, there's a strong sort of malted barley character that I didn't get with the first one. It's possibly the mash bill is, the blend is made up of a higher percentage of malted barley alcohol rather than grain alcohol, but it's definitely not as sweet as the first one. Let's give it another sip. Yeah, so the middle one, it's a sweet, soft vanilla whiskey, but there is definitely a malted barley character to that. It's quite pleasant. It actually tastes more grown up than the first one. The first one's very round and very sweet, and I do love sweet whiskies. But this one, I wouldn't necessarily immediately say it's got that Irish whiskey character. Okay, let's move on to the last one. Okay, so this one has got that really buttery, sweet vanilla character that you'd expect from a traditional Irish. It's similar to the first one, but there's more pepperiness on the finish. It's I'd say it's a little aggressive, but to be fair to all of these, they aren't designed to be drunk neat. They're designed to be well, as a chaser, so not to be savoured and enjoyed, or as a mixed drink. So the fact that I'm drinking them neat and trying to pick out you know, the different characters, that isn't really what they're intended for. But this one is nice and sweet. So let's give this one more go on the palate. Yeah, definitely got that creamy vanilla sweetness. It's quite a pleasant whiskey, but there is a decent amount of alcohol vapor, so it's not something that you'd spend a lot of time with. It's probably a whiskey you'd start the evening with to activate the palate, activate the senses, but it's not something you could sit and enjoy. So let me try and say which are my favourites and in what order, and then I'll have a stab at which is which. So this one was my favourite. It has that typical creamy, buttery sweetness. It's not too heavy on the alcohol vapour, and it's got a nice nose. So that would be number one. I'm torn between these two because this one has the creamy vanilla tone on the palate, but too much alcohol vapour. It's a little bit too aggressive. This one doesn't have that level of alcohol vapour, but it doesn't have the sweetness. So this has that malty character that I mentioned. So I'd probably give this second place, and then obviously this one third. So let's have a quick stab. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but based on my knowledge and limited knowledge and previous experience, I'm guessing that this one is the Jameson. Let's have a look. Yep, there's a J, so that is the Jameson. I think the Jameson is quite unique in the fact that it has been perfected for such a mass market audience that that buttery sweetness, I think, is always going to stand out. Obviously, the third one definitely had that, but it lacked that quality. But let's have a stab at what number 2 is. I think number 2 is Paddy Irish Whiskey. No, there's a T, that means it's Tullamore D.E.W. So that means that the third one should have a P on it, and it does, so that's Paddy Irish Whiskey. So not only have I failed to get them all right, I did get my favourite right, which is Jameson. So does that make Jameson the best budget Irish whiskey? Well, it does in this taste test. So here's to getting another blind tasting partially right. Slauncher.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give it a like or a comment, and please consider subscribing for more videos like this.